Reshoots are most commonly conducted to flesh out story or character beats that test audiences found confusing or to fix editing issues, but every so often they'll be the result of actors being dismissed from the project, whether during shooting or once principal photography has long been completed. Rare though it may be for actors to be replaced once cameras have started rolling, it happens for a number of different reasons. Perhaps the director simply isn't satisfied with the actor's performance, decides they're wrong for the part, or the ever-tricky creative differences get in the way. Whatever the reason, you're watching What Culture, and here are actors who gave amazing performances in reshoots. Paul Dano, There Will Be Blood. Paul Dano in Paul Thomas Anderson's epic period drama There Will Be Blood is an especially interesting case, given that Dano was already cast in the film in the small role of Paul Sunday. The part of Paul's preacher brother Eli was originally played by Kel O'Neill, who was fired 2 weeks into the shoot. Though rumors initially indicated that O'Neill was intimidated by co-star Daniel Day-Lewis's intense method acting, and I mean, who wouldn't, he really went to town on that milkshake, this was ultimately dismissed by O'Neill, Anderson, and Day-Lewis himself. All the same, Anderson decided to replace O'Neill with Dano, in turn changing Paul and Eli Sunday into twin brothers and massively expanding Dano's presence in the movie, given how much larger Eli's role actually is. And to say that Dano stands toe-to-toe with Day-Lewis, by no means an easy feat, I mean, the guy is literally one of the greatest actors of his generation, is quite the understatement. So perfectly cast is he as the weaselly, insincere preacher who so ill-advisedly crosses Day-Lewis's oilman, Daniel Plainview. Dano should have received a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for this performance, but all the same, it remains his finest work to date. Impressive for a part he jumped into with effectively zero prep time. Gosh, what an amazing year 2007 was for film. This, Zodiac, Michael Clayton, No Country for Old Men, just take me back.
Sandra Bullock in Demolition Man. 1993's Demolition Man paired up Sylvester Stallone's maverick cop John Spartan with Wesley Snipes' psychotic criminal Simon Phoenix to great effect. After causing mayhem in their own time, the pair are frozen and wake up in the future where, predictably, they end up causing more destruction. Another key character in the tale is Lenina Huxley, who becomes Spartan's love interest. She's played by Sandra Bullock in what would be her big breakout role, but things almost shook out very differently. Laurie Petty was initially hired to play Huxley, but she only lasted 2 days on set before getting the boot. Producer John Silver cited creative differences as the reason for Petty's departure, but the Point Break and Free Willy star said that it was issues with Stallone that led to her sacking. It's hard to imagine Petty filling this role with the power of hindsight, and even harder to imagine a Hollywood without Bullock, but if she didn't get this part, then the rest of her career might have looked very different. Imagine a world without Miss Congeniality. What a nasty place that would be.
James McAvoy Split. Up until a few weeks before M. Night Shyamalan's Split started shooting, the role of Kevin Wendell Crumb, a man with dissociative identity disorder whose psyche harbours 24 distinct identities, was set to be played by Shyamalan's regular collaborator Joaquin Phoenix. It was never explained why Phoenix departed so late in the day, though given his history of bailing on films last minute, it may very much have been a him problem. Either way, Shyamalan quickly replaced Phoenix with James McAvoy, who had just 2 weeks to prepare to play the challenging, multifaceted role. And yet, McAvoy went on to receive rave reviews for his incredible performance, with even many of the film's detractors lauding the actor for his nuanced and persuasive portrayal of a man with dissociative identity disorder. Now, of course, Phoenix is an incredible actor who would have absolutely done something fascinating with the character. It's just what he does. But given what brilliance McAvoy gave us in the end, it's tough to lament what we missed out on much at all. And speaking of James McAvoy, I want to know right now in the comments, what is your favourite James McAvoy performance to date? I like him as Professor X because I'm a Marvel nerd and he makes me smile. Let me know yours.
Ed Harris, The Truman Show. Ed Harris was the sole actor in The Truman Show to receive much awards recognition, scooping a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his terrific performance as the titular reality TV show's godlike creator, Christoph. But it may surprise you to know that it was the late Dennis Hopper who was originally cast in the role, despite some consternation from both director Peter Weir and producer Scott Rudin, who agreed that Hopper would be recast if they didn't feel he was a good fit once shooting started. Well, all it took was 2 days of filming for Hopper to be fired, and given that the Kristoff scenes were all scheduled to be shot at the very end of production, finding a replacement was a majorly pressing matter. With Paramount growing impatient, Weir ultimately decided to meet with Harris, and after a meeting the same day, hired him for the job. As a result, Harris only had a weekend to prepare for the role before filming began, including reshooting Hopper's scenes, yet according to the actor, he appreciated the lack of time he had to think about the part, forcing him to act on instinct instead. All the same, Harris's understated work in the role remains one of his greatest screen performances to date, lending soul and dimension to a fascinatingly complex villain. And also, just gotta shout out Peter Weir, I love you, what an amazing director, and Ed Harris too, just a greatly underappreciated actor, I feel.
Albert Brooks in Finding Nemo. From Lost in America to broadcast news to his outstanding turn as Hank Scorpio on The Simpsons, Albert Brooks is a phenomenal actor who really does not get the love he deserved. His most beloved role is easily that of Marlin, the neurotic clownfish and father of the title character in Finding Nemo. His hilarious outbursts, strained relationship with Dory, and sheer determination to track down his boy provide many of the movie's greatest moments, even if the forgetful Blue Tang often steals his thunder. Brooks was not the first choice to play Marlin. That was William H. Macy, the star of Fargo, Boogie Nights, and actually recorded most of the dialogue for the role, but director Andrew Stanton pulled a last-minute U-turn when he felt that the film needed more levity. He hired Brooks to give the character a lighter feel, and sure enough, it worked. Stanton said on the film's DVD commentary that this decision saved the film, and considering how integral Brooks' performance feels, that probably is indeed the case. You gotta feel sorry for poor Macy though. It's not his fault he's too good of a dramatic actor.
Stephanie Hsu, Everything Everywhere All at Once. The Best Picture-winning absurdist dramedy Everything Everywhere All at Once was widely acclaimed for its 4 central performances, all of which were nominated for Oscars, and 3 of which went on to win the Gongs outright. Stephanie Hsu ended up losing out on a Best Supporting Actress Oscar to her veteran co-star Jamie Lee Curtis, but Hsu's performance as Evelyn's troubled daughter Joy was nothing if not a star-making turn. Yet Hsu wasn't actually the first choice for the part, you know. Awkwafina was originally signed to play Joy in early 2018, though she ended up leaving the film due to scheduling conflicts shortly before shooting began. Now, Awkwafina has proven herself a plenty talented dramatic actor in projects like The Farewell, but it's also tough to fully picture her as this character. I mean, for starters, her higher profile as a performer would have surely prevented her from disappearing into the role in the way that the lesser-known Hsu did. And it's easy to picture her manic energy resulting in a portrayal of Joy/Jobu Tupaki that was a little too big for its own good. Hsu nailed it in the end.
Scarlett Johansson, her. Now, it goes without saying that recasting a voice role is significantly less arduous for filmmakers than one that's in front of the camera, but all the same, in the case of Spike Jonze's brilliant sci-fi romance Her, the voiceover role had very special significance. During principal photography, Samantha Morton was hired to voice protagonist Theodore Twombly's AI love interest Samantha, and rather than merely record her lines during post-production, she was actually present for the whole shoot, acting on set in a soundproof booth. However, during editing, Jones decided that Morton's performance wasn't quite the right fit for the character, and so decided to recast, drafting in Scarlett Johansson as her replacement, while Morton received an associate producer credit. Despite the expectation that Johansson would simply re-record the lines over a weekend, she reportedly spent 4 months working on the film with Jones, who also reshot new material to accommodate the change of performer. Those months were evidently well spent though, given that beyond the inherent appeal of Johansson's soothing dulcet tones, she gives a terrifically nuanced performance as an unexpectedly multifaceted character, enough that some even believed her worthy of an Oscar nom despite her lack of visual presence in the film.
Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop. The Beverly Hills Cop movies, which follow the various mishaps of wisecracking lawman Axel Foley, are landmark action comedies from the 80s. They turned actor Eddie Murphy into a superstar, gave directors Martin Brest and Tony Scott space to flex their filmmaking chops, and also gifted audiences with one of the best movie soundtracks of the decade. But the core component is undoubtedly Murphy, so much of his personality comes from the fact that he's played by Eddie Murphy, a fast-talking 80s comedy legend, which is why it's crazy to think that the character was initially earmarked for Sylvester Stallone. Sly, making his second appearance on the list, rewrote most of the original Beverly Hills Cop script to make it more dramatic. Ultimately, the studio decided this was not the direction they wanted to go in and said bye-bye to Rocky Balboa. Murphy was eventually chosen as his replacement, and movie comedy history was indeed made. If you're curious as to what a Stallone-penned Beverly Hills Cop would have looked like, he recycled most of his ideas into his 1986 movie Cope.
Donald Pleasance. You only live twice. You Only Live Twice was the James Bond film which finally bestowed a proper, fleshed-out part to villain Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Also, maybe the best Bond theme? I'll leave that up to you folks, but Nancy Sinatra killed it on this. Czech actor Jan Verick was originally cast in the role of Blofeld. Once he made it to set to begin shooting though, producer Albert R. Broccoli and director Lewis Gilbert both felt they'd made a mistake, even comparing his look to Father Christmas. Broccoli and Gilbert nevertheless pressed ahead, hoping that their instincts were wrong, but after a few days of shooting, agreed that Verick just wasn't menacing enough to play the supervillain. And so, the great, immortal Donald Pleasance was hurriedly drafted in to replace him, reshooting Verick's scenes, save for a few shots of him stroking Blofeld's pet cat, and completing the rest of the role. On top of this, Pleasance brought with him many ideas for the character, including Blofeld's now iconic scarred eye, and though many actors have portrayed the villain over the last 50 years, Pleasance's rendition remains the easy consensus favourite among fans. Although, I must say that Telly Savalas rocked it best for me in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Just saying.
Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. The two Tim Burton Batman movies absolutely nailed their villain casting. 1989's Batman showcased Jack Nicholson as a fan favourite version of Joker, while its sequel 1992's Batman Returns was twice as nice with Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer stealing the show as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. This whip-cracking, leather-clad femme fatale is up there with the very best live-action portrayals of the comic book anti-hero, but Pfeiffer had to scratch and claw her way to land the part. Catwoman was initially offered to Annette Bening, who was forced to give up the role after falling pregnant. Sean Young was a frontrunner for a while, turning up to the audition in a homemade costume and even going on Joan Rivers' talk show in character to drum up support, but she too was passed over. This must have been doubtfully painful for Young, as she had previously been cast as Vicky Vale in the previous Batman movie before an injury led to Kim Basinger replacing her.
Lewis Pullman, Thunderbolts. And now for the most recent film on this list, we have the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe joint, Thunderbolts, or The New Avengers, or whatever they're calling it at time of recording. The role of Bob, aka Sentry, was originally set to be played by The Walking Dead and Beef star Steven Yeun, but Yeun ended up departing the project in early 2024 due to scheduling issues, as a result of the Hollywood strike action in 2023. He was swiftly replaced by Lewis Pullman, and watching the final movie, it's honestly hard to picture Yeun in the role. He's a terrific Oscar-nominated actor, but it is safe to say that Sentry would give off a very different vibe with Yeun playing the part. Pullman brings a disarming, nervous energy to the role that makes him both endearing and a bit unpredictable. Yes, Yeun probably would have done a solid job with his own spin on the character, but all in all, Pullman was an inspired replacement, who made the character far more memorable than he might have been in the hands of another actor. Yeun or not, everything worked out for the best, basically.
Bruce Greenwood, The Fall of the House of Usher. A quick divergence into the world of TV now, with Mike Flanagan's mesmerizing recent horror drama series The Fall of the House of Usher. The central role of Usher family patriarch Roderick Usher was originally set to be played by Frank Langella, yet midway through shooting, he was dismissed from the production following an investigation into his alleged misconduct with co-stars and crew members on set. A few weeks later, the wonderful character actor Bruce Greenwood was drafted in to take Langella's place, and watching the end product, it's basically impossible to imagine Langella giving as spectacular a performance as Greenwood. Greenwood simply feels like a more natural fit for the suave, loquacious, corrupt farmer CEO. Not to mention being almost 20 years Langella's junior, making him more plausibly the father of Usher's 6 adult children.
Mike Myers in Shrek. Chris Farley was an extremely popular comedian, actor, SNL cast member, and all-round entertainment tour de force. He appeared in various big movies from Wayne's World to Airheads to Tommy Boy, and would have surely enjoyed more success had he not died of a drug overdose in 1997, aged just 33 years old. Prior to his death, Farley was working as a voice actor for an upcoming DreamWorks animated feature. The role was a hideous green ogre who, through a dangerous quest to recover an imprisoned princess, learned that the outside world isn't as hostile as he thought. That's right, Farley was the original voice actor for Shrek. The star had recorded most of his lines for the movie before he passed away, and the studio considered getting his brother John to complete his dialogue, but instead, Mike Myers was cast as his replacement, and the character would go on to become a worldwide phenomenon. There's no telling how Farley's version of the unlikely fairy tale hero would have gone down, but it's hard to picture him without his iconic Scottish twang, which was a Myers innovation.
Jennifer Jason Leigh, The Hateful Eight. When Quentin Tarantino was assembling his Western thriller, The Hateful Eight, he initially eyed Jennifer Lawrence for the role of the main villain, Daisy Domergue, a murderous, psychotic gang leader. But Lawrence ended up declining the part due to her commitments to both the Hunger Games franchise and the David O. Russell movie Joy, leading Tarantino to land on Jennifer Jason Leigh instead. And watching the movie, it is hard to appreciate how Lawrence would fit into it. She would have been just 24 years old when shooting started, whereas the middle-aged Leigh was simply far more innately believable in the role of a wily veteran criminal. Now, Tarantino obviously knows what he's doing casting-wise, he rarely gets it wrong, though it is clear that Daisy would have felt like a very different character as played by Lawrence. And considering that Leigh gives the most acclaimed performance in the movie, one which finally netted her a belated Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination, it's impossible to lament J-Law missing out here. If you're having fun looking at these awesome actor replacements in movies, then tap that subscribe button below for even more terrific What Culture videos on your screen each and every day.
Winona Ryder, Mermaids. Classic 1990 family comedy Mermaids received general acclaim for the performances of its cast, but especially Winona Ryder, who plays protagonist Charlotte Flax, the neurotic 15-year-old daughter of freewheeling single mother Rachel, played by Cher. But shooting actually started with another actress, Emily Lloyd, playing the role of Charlotte, only for Cher to complain early during shooting that Lloyd didn't look enough like her to plausibly be her daughter. And so, Lloyd was dismissed mid-filming, and because she turned down the lead role in Pretty Woman of all things in order to star in Mermaids, she filed a lawsuit against Orion Pictures for breach of contract and consequently received $175,000 in damages. I mean, yeah, that's not a great situation to be in. Lloyd was quickly replaced with Ryder, who Cher approved of after watching her performance in Heathers, and while this was certainly a tough blow for Lloyd, given that Ryder went on to receive a Best Supporting Actress Golden Globe nomination for her turn, it's tough to argue much of the decision.
Gene Wilder in Blazing Saddles. Mel Brooks' legendary spoof western Blazing Saddles is still regarded by many as one of the funniest films ever made. Its story revolves around the partnership between a sheriff named Burt and an alcoholic gunfire, Jim, the wacko kid, played by a frequent Brooks collaborator, Gene Wilder. Though the pair had already worked together on The Producers, Wilder was not who Brooks originally wanted for the role. After first offering the part to John Wayne, who, in true Duke fashion, did not get the joke, Brooks eventually settled on on Gig Young, a 3-time Oscar nominee with a real-life drinking problem. Sadly, Young's demons wasted little time in derailing the shoot as he collapsed on set during his first scene. The star was diagnosed with severe alcohol withdrawal and deemed unfit to fulfill his duties. Brooks got on the phone to Wilder, who flew in to save the day. Wilder absolutely crushed it here. He played a huge part in making Blazing Saddles what it is, and the Wacko Kid would also define his career moving forward. It might not have been under the most pleasant of circumstances, but thank God this switch happened.
R. Lee Ermey, Full Metal Jacket. Difficult though it is to believe, R. Lee Ermey wasn't actually the first choice to play Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. Actor and former Marine Tim Colseri was originally cast in the role, while Ermey, himself an ex-Marines drill instructor and occasional actor, was merely hired as a technical advisor to help train Colseri. But during pre-production, Ermey taped footage of himself playing a drill instructor character, and Kubrick became so fascinated with it that he ultimately decided an actor would never be able to play the part as well. And so Kubrick gave the Hartman role to Ermey instead, and as a consolation prize to Colseri, he was given the much smaller part of a sadistic helicopter door gunner. It was a tough break for Colseri, no doubt. But watching the final film, Ermey was just born to play this role, and Full Metal Jacket likely wouldn't have hit nearly as hard or become as iconic as it did if another actor played Hartman. At least Colseri wasn't dropped from the movie altogether, I guess.
Freddie Stroma, Peacemaker. Another TV example to share here with the part of Adrian Chase, aka Vigilante, in James Gunn's DC series Peacemaker. In the show, Vigilante is a hilariously awkward wannabe superhero who looks up to Peacemaker, and over the course of the show's first season, categorically won DC fans' hearts. However, the part was originally played by Chris Conrad, yet after Conrad had shot 5 of the show's 8 episodes, he exited the production due to unspecified creative differences with Gunn. At this point, Freddie Stroma was drafted in to replace Conrad, and despite Vigilante spending much of the show underneath a mask, all of Conrad's scenes were reshot with Stroma regardless, likely due to Stroma being noticeably smaller in stature. And while it's impossible to judge Conrad's work given we never got to see it, Stroma brings such a show-stealing quality and so much unexpected heart to the character, in turn delivering one of the best performances of the entire series.
Michael Biehn in Aliens. There was just one problem with 20th Century Fox's plans to make a sequel to Ridley Scott's Alien. Pretty much all the characters had been killed off in the first film. To get around this rather annoying issue, a host of new faces were brought in to back up Ellen Ripley in her fight against the Xenomorphs, including Corporal Dwayne Hicks, played by Michael Biehn. Biehn, who director James Cameron had previously cast as Carl Reese in The Terminator, played a key part in the success of this movie, forming a bond with the traumatized Ripley and helping her start her new family alongside Newt and Bishop. Well, until they're all pointlessly killed off in the next film. Producer Walter Hill initially recommended James Remar, who had previously appeared in The Warriors and The Cotton Club, to play Hicks. He left the set shortly after filming started due to an arrest for drug possession, which led to being taken on the role. Remar does appear in some parts of the final cut, but only from behind.
Tig Notaro, Army of the Dead. Comedian Chris D'Elia was originally cast in a supporting role in Zack Snyder's zombie heist flick Army of the Dead, as the crew's helicopter pilot Peters. However, after sexual misconduct allegations were leveled against D'Elia during post-production, Snyder made the decision to remove D'Elia from the film and replace him with comedian Tig Notaro. This resulted in reshoots where Notaro performed the part mostly opposite stand-ins, with CGI being used to integrate her performance into previously shot scenes, the result of which is impressively seamless for the most part. More to the point, Notaro gives one of the best performances in the whole damn film, her sardonic persona adding some welcome flavour to what's otherwise a relatively generic action horror film. Tig smashed the gig.
Ben Whishaw in Paddington. When it was first announced that a story featuring beloved children's character and marmalade addict Paddington Bear was coming to the big screen, nobody could have predicted how well it would do. The first Paddington film and its sequel are bona fide modern classics, with even the most hardened of cynics warming up to the irresistible charm. Both movies are stacked with talent, with Hugh Bonneville, Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant, Jim Broadbent, and many more sharing screen time with Peru's greatest export. Initially, Colin Firth was to voice to the hard-staring, raincoat-wearing bundle of joy, but he left of his own accord after the studio decided he wasn't the right fit. Enter Ben Whishaw, best known as the latest version of Q in the James Bond series. His warm tones and welcoming cadence perfectly suited the politest character in all of fiction, and he has helped to make Paddington an icon all over the world. Firth is a fine actor for sure, but he would have been totally wrong for this film. Usually, studios don't know their elbows from their backsides when it comes to casting decisions, but this time, they got it spot on.
Martin Sheen, Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is one of the most iconic movies of all time for many reasons, not least Martin Sheen's phenomenal performance as protagonist Captain Willard. But Francis Ford Coppola actually initially cast Harvey Keitel to play the part instead. And yet, mid-days into shooting, the director began to feel that he was a bad fit for Willard, that the famously intense actor was struggling to play Willard as the passive observer he's supposed to be. And so, Keitel departed the film after a few weeks of production, after which Coppola deferred to his second choice, Sheen, to replace him. Sheen's more restrained energy was ultimately perfect for who Willard is on the page. And even just looking at photos of Keitel on set, yeah, he seems like an inferior fit. Now, as hiccups during the production of Apocalypse Now go, this was actually pretty low down on the totem pole. Though Sheen's casting also came with its own issues, namely the actor suffering a near-fatal heart attack near the end of shooting. Yep, this one was a ride.
Christopher Plummer, All the Money in the World. Ridley Scott's crime drama All the Money in the World originally cast Kevin Spacey in the role of cantankerous oil tycoon J. Paul Getty. But in October 2017, roughly 2 months before the film's premiere, sexual misconduct accusations leveled against the actor led to him being removed from the film entirely. Rather than delay its release as most expected, Scott hurriedly recast Christopher Plummer in the role. His original choice, actually, before the studio requested a bigger name, and so they conducted 10 days of reshoots less than a month before the film's premiere. The reshoots, including a rush order placed on post-production, added $10 million to the film's budget, yet allowed it to quite elegantly sidestep the controversy of Spacey's involvement and still release in time for awards season deadlines. Perhaps most impressively of all, Plummer's nimble performance as Getty resulted in him receiving an Oscar nom for Best Supporting Actor, a staggering achievement for a role he had so little time to prepare for. That you'd never know Plummer's part was hastily inserted into the film mere weeks before release is a testament to both the late actor's tenacity as a performer and Scott's apparently unwavering work ethic.
Hugh Jackman in X-Men. Hugh Jackman is so deeply associated with the X-Men film series and the character of Wolverine that he is in the Guinness Book of World Records for playing the grumpy Canadian. And it would cause an international incident if anyone else ever took over his reins. However, in an alternate universe, somebody else got to wear the claws. Scottish actor Dougray Scott was initially cast as Wolverine, but pulled out due to scheduling conflicts, a motorbike accident, and, according to Scott himself, the orders of Tom Cruise. Scott had initially been signed to a multi-picture deal, meaning Fox clearly had big plans for him, and it's just fate that had other ideas. The first X-Men movie had been shooting for 3 weeks when Jackman was cast. He knew so little about the superhero that he actually spent time studying wolves ahead of filming, but because he thought that this would help him with the character. Don't worry folks, he'll figure it out eventually. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, drop us a like, share and subscribe too.
Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, La La Land. It is incredibly difficult to picture anyone but Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling playing the lead roles of star-crossed lovers Mia and Seb in Damien Chazelle's terrific musical romantic drama La La Land. But Stone and Gosling actually weren't Chazelle's top choices for the duo. Nope, he originally courted Emma Watson and Miles Teller to play Mia and Seb. Both eventually dropped out. And ultimately, they're a combo that's tricky to make sense of. First off, Watson didn't exactly impress many with her aggressively auto-tuned singing in the live-action Beauty and the Beast remake. And as solid a dramatic actress as she definitely is, she's not nearly as charming as Emma Stone. Likewise, Miles Teller is a solid actor, but hardly a Ryan Gosling-level talent. And while Stone and Gosling's chemistry is evident from their first moment on screen together, it isn't easy to picture Watson and Teller gelling in quite the same way. Look, Watson and Teller may have surprised us all in the end, who knows? But Stone and Gosling just vibe perfectly with the film's old Hollywood vibe, something the former duo would have surely struggled with.
Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future. The frantic nature of Back to the Future's production has been extensively written about over the years, namely that the film's first 34 days of shooting saw not Michael J. Fox playing the part of protagonist Marty McFly, but instead Eric Stoltz. Stoltz, who is a terrific actor in his own right, was cast after scheduling issues prevented Fox from playing the role. But more than a month into filming, director Robert Zemeckis confessed that he felt Stoltz was wrong for Marty, playing the part with too much intensity. As a result, Stoltz was dismissed, and by this time it became possible for Fox to replace him as the lead. This required a whole month's worth of Stoltz's scenes being reshot, which, when combined with Stoltz being paid his full salary, added an estimated $4 million to the budget while putting the shoot hugely behind schedule. And despite much negativity surrounding the film when it was in production, a tough claim to believe nowadays given how beloved it is, Back to the Future of course went on to become a massive success, in large part due to Fox's pitch-perfect performance as Marty McFly. Truly, it's difficult to picture anyone else playing that part. Fox is Marty, no matter that he had to hit the ground running as soon as Stoltz was given his marching orders.
Viggo Mortensen in the Lord of the Rings series. Viggo Mortensen is Aragorn. This Danish-American heartthrob did such a good job of bringing the future King of Gondor to life. Also, did you know he broke his toe when he kicked that helmet? In another world, Daniel Day-Lewis could have played the part in Peter Jackson's epic Lord of the Rings trilogy, as he was discussed by the director and studio, but no serious offer was even made. Instead, they first reached out to Stuart Townsend, who would go on to play Dorian Gray in the film version of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and he said yes. Unfortunately, the powers that be thought that Townsend wasn't old enough to play Strider, and he was sent home even though shooting had already begun. In came Mortensen to take his place, and that was that. Mortensen embodies so many of the qualities that make Aragorn such an amazing literary character. No offense to Mr. Townsend, but there is simply no way he could have done a better job than the man with the piercing blue eyes.
Aaron Pierre, Rebel Ridge. The production of Jeremy Saulnier's latest thriller, Rebel Ridge, was basically a nightmare scenario for any filmmaker, given that original star John Boyega abruptly left the shoot a few weeks into principal photography for unspecified reasons. That left Saulnier scrambling to replace him, and ultimately he landed on rising British actor Aaron Pierre. After a 10-month production pause, Rebel Ridge resumed shooting and was seemingly completed without further incident. And watching the final film, a gut-wrenching thriller in which Pierre's protagonist is an ex-Marine facing off against the corrupt authorities of a small town. It's quite tough to picture Boyega playing the part nearly this well. Pierre's imposing stature and overall physicality make him immediately believable as a former soldier capable of taking the local cops to task, whereas the also rather brilliant John Boyega would have brought a much scrappier energy to the table. It also isn't easy to picture Boyega performing the action beats so effectively, nor bringing the quiet intensity that Pierre did. Regardless of what actually caused Boyega to quit the film then, Pierre was a perfect replacement who probably should have just been cast in the first place. Ah well, it all worked out in the end.